Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Behind Enemy Lines podcast on the Blood Red channel, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo with myself, Patrick Smith, as we preview Liverpool's trip to the Emirates to take on Arsenal in the Premier League. With Manchester City dropping points away at Crystal Palace, the Reds are now able to cut the title race gap to just 1 point with victory over Arsenal, but that will by no means be easy. Well, I'm now delighted to be joined by writer and presenter Tom Canton from the Arsenal Way to discuss the nature of the task for Liverpool. So, Tom, what can our listening and watching Liverpool fans expect on Wednesday night?
Probably their toughest challenge in quite a few games, to be fair. Arsenal have always been a side that I think Liverpool have been fairly confident about facing in recent seasons. I don't think that's really up for debate. And Arsenal have kind of always approached these games with quite a lot of apprehension because we obviously know how good Liverpool are. But yeah, Arsenal have really changed in kind of the last 3 to 4 months, especially since just before the Christmas period hit. We have gone for a really good period of form, beating sides that a lot of people kind of question whether or not we'd have the guile to be able to beat. West Ham at home, Wolves home and away. You know, we run Manchester City very, very close at the Emirates. Should have got arguably definitely a point, maybe even more, had we not, succumbed to the old Arsenal traits of giving away penalties and getting red cards, as we like to do these days. But we had a really good opportunity in that game to pick up 3 points. And I'm sure that at the Emirates, Arsenal will certainly be looking at the Liverpool chance again as maybe a bit of a Man City take two kind of scenario where there's the opportunity to maybe make do with the wrongs that we get right this time around.
I mean, you mentioned that City game there, that could almost be a catalyst because your rise in form since then has been so impressive, hasn't it? And obviously, the two clubs have already met 3 times this season, that being Liverpool and Arsenal, of course. You know, it's fair to say Liverpool have had the upper hand, but what's different now between this current Arsenal side compared to, the one, say, pre-Christmas?
Yeah, I mean, we've only lost 1 league game since we lost, ironically, to Everton on the 6th of December, which looks like an awful result now when you consider where they are. Honestly, it was unbelievable. It was one of the worst games I've ever watched when we lost that Everton game. But yeah, what's changed, I think, is that Aubameyang's dropping has been huge. I mean, I was looking at the statistics the other day. In the 14 games that Aubameyang has played this season, we've scored 18 goals. And then in the 11 games since he was dropped, we've scored 25. So it's ironic that you take out who is a world-class striker on his day. Let's make no bones about that. But for what Mikel Arteta was trying to achieve, Alexandre Lacazette has kind of fulfilled that role a lot more. So his link-up play, the way in which we attack is a lot more refined. We're a lot more threatening in the wide areas as well. And I think that also the midfield, Xhaka and Partey, those two combining fantastically well. But the biggest kind of difference and the biggest star of this period has definitely been Martin Odegaard, because he's just been an absolutely fabulous footballer to watch. And there was a lot of doubts about him in the summer, or whether or not we should have, spent the money or instead maybe pushed a little bit harder for, say, James Maddison from Leicester. Arteta knew the guy that he wanted. He continued to push for Odegaard. It looks like we weren't going to sign him. And then Real Madrid and Ancelotti just turned around and basically said, look, you're probably not going to get the opportunities this season. And he made that opportunity to then take the chance to move to Arsenal. And it's been fantastic this season, especially since the turn of the new year as well.
Yeah, you've led to my next question really well there. Odegaard has rightly been taking the headlines recently. How important is he to your side? Is there a reason for this recent spike in his form, or has he sort of been more in the shadows for the start of the season?
It's a tricky one to kind of put your finger on why it's changed so drastically, because he wasn't really known for chipping in with lots of goal contributions, goals or assists. But this season, especially since the games kind of around November time, he really started stepping things up. I think Mikel Arteta spoke about how he was challenging him. I think Odegaard actually did the interview with Norwegian TV2 where he kind of admitted that Arteta's challenged him to get into the box more and to be a little bit more threatening. And I think the goal that he scored against Watford definitely highlighted that combination play with Saka, where he is really learning from what Arteta's telling him to do. So I think both Odegaard and Arteta deserves credit for kind of developing his game this season. He's only 23, but he's probably one of the most experienced players in the Premier League, despite the fact he's still so young, because he's been on the senior scene since he was 16 years of age. He's been on numerous loans to Vitesse, and he's also been elsewhere in Holland. He also went back to Spain with Real Sociedad and did really well there before coming back to Arsenal for that 6 months. So, he's done fantastically well. And I think that when you look at his captaincy in the Norwegian national side and you combine all of those factors together, you've got a player that is 23, but it's probably got the head of a 28, 29-year-old on his shoulders. And I think that maturity in this Arsenal side has been really necessary.
I think as well, he slightly moved to the right-hand side of your midfield three now, hasn't he, rather than the number 10 spot? Because if he were in the number 10 role, Fabinho obviously probably one of, if not the best defensive midfielders in the world. you think Liverpool are going to struggle to pick him up in that right-hand side spot?
No, because you're Liverpool and you're very good. I don't think you will struggle. I think that he will challenge you, and I think that he kind of pops up in the half spaces sometimes and does really well on the right-hand side to support Saka. It's that basically the thing with Arsenal is that whilst we're playing really well, at the moment we can still be a little bit one or two dimensional. Like we rarely kind of go into the nature of being unpredictable. You kind of know what you're going to get from Arsenal, and if you can shut down Saka and if you can shut down Odegaard, that takes a huge proportion of what Arsenal are capable of doing out of the team right now. Because if you look back at, say, last season, 2020-21, Kieran Tierney was kind of ironically the most threatening part of Arsenal down that left-hand flank. He was crossing balls into the box all day long, and it was just monotonously predictable to know what Arsenal were going to do. This season, there's been a lot better. Odegaard stepped up, Saka stepped up, Lacazette, despite not scoring, is definitely helping with his link-up play. And Tierney's been a little bit more subdued this season. Hasn't really been the same Tierney that we saw last year. The left-hand side, Martinelli and Smith Rowe have been vying it out for that left-hand spot. But it's so crucial that Odegaard and Saka are on form for Arsenal to be in their tip-top form. So the reason why I say no, I don't think you'll struggle to kind of deal with it, because the midfield of what you've got available to you is so good, especially with Fabinho and what he does and how consistent the defence is at shutting down the best parts of opposition sides, that it's going to take both of and the rest of the Arsenal team to be on their absolute top game to have any kind of hope of getting through that Liverpool backline and midfield.
I suppose our strong midfield may do well with Odegaard, but Bukayo Saka, he mentioned, keeping him quiet isn't exactly straightforward, is it? I mean, in my opinion, he's the one who's caused Liverpool the most problems when the two clubs have met this season. How can Liverpool cope with Saka, and what problems will he cause us?
You cope with him by doubling up as much as feasibly possible. He can struggle sometimes to break away, but that is part of his game that's definitely stepped up this season. Is he rolls away from players with a strange feeling of he's a lot stronger than he actually looks. And he's really good at kind of breaking away from defenders in tight spaces, keeping the ball under control. That's a lot of the things that people looked at for Nicolas Pepe and said, why isn't Pepe necessarily getting into the team as much as Saka is? And it's because Saka's ability to keep the ball close to his feet whilst beating his players has gone to a different level above what Pepe can kind of achieve at Arsenal at the moment. What he doesn't and has still improved on, admittedly, is his finishing. And that's where Pepe's kind of game was always lauded, he was one of the best finishers at the club. But with Saka, it's when he's getting into these goal-scoring positions, he's doing really well to take those chances. You look at the goals that he scored this season again in the Watford game the other day, the goal that he scored against Brentford from the left-hand side across the keeper, the goals he scored against Leeds. It was a fantastic finish in that fixture too. You look at those games and he's definitely added that threat to his game. But if you do double up on him, if Robertson doesn't overcommit too often, Saka will be able to be probably shackled more so than Arteta would like. The difference is with Liverpool's fullbacks playing so far high up the pitch so often, if Saka is able to get him behind Robertson and Odegaard's able to feed him, and as he does, that's probably where you're going to be most vulnerable during the game, I would imagine.
Yeah, and of course, as well, you've got so many attacking options, and you spoke about the Watford game there. Martinelli as well had a brilliant performance then. The story of the season has been, Saka and Smith Rowe, as your chant goes. But Martinelli's really stepped up recently as well. And you have got 3 games in the space of a week. So do you think Arteta is going to rotate any of those attacking options going into this game?
There's the possibility that Smith Rowe comes in. I think that Martinelli, whilst he's a classic 20-year-old who's got lots of talent. He's your classic, like, in certain games, explodes with loads of like clips that you'll go viral online. And the Chelsea goal that he scored where he ran from one half of the pitch, the other, for instance, being one of them, the goal he scored the other day against Watford. But actually that Watford game, he wasn't amazing. And that one goal that he scored was kind of the bright spark of the fixture. But then when he plays against Liverpool, there's this weird thing that Klopp loves to, talk him up and talk about him as kind of, this special talent, which he is. But I still feel like that Arteta will continue with him despite these issues, because we played West Ham and Southampton and Leeds in the space of a week in the December period. And he kept the same lineup for those 3 games. So he's not uncomfortable using the exact same lineup across all of those fixtures. So I think he probably will end up sticking with the team as is. The only possible option is maybe if Tomiyasu's back fit, which we're not 100% sure. He said that he's back training today. I doubt he'd risk throwing him in, but he may bring him back for Villa at the weekend, but probably not Liverpool.
Well, yeah, let's move on to the defence, because obviously Mo Salah has missed training. We're not sure whether he's going to start or not, so we may be looking at a weakened-ish Liverpool attack. So how have Arsenal's defensive performances of late been? And, will you be hoping for a repeat of that League Cup first leg in the semi-final where you managed to keep us at bay?
Yeah, obviously there's a difference in that game, I suppose, because when we went down to 10 men, we brought Rob Holding on and went to a back three. And actually, that's been a bit of a discussion amongst the Arsenal fan base is whether or not we should go to a back three in this game and bring Rob Holding in, because when Holding's come in, he's done really, really well alongside White and Gabriel. Tierney,
you turn into a prime Italy with that defence, don't you?
Of course, yeah. But Tierney and Cedric have been a little bit questionable defensively this season. Cedric, especially, we know he's quite good going forwards, but defensively can be very limited. That's where Tomiyasu's strengths really come into it when he's fully fit. He wasn't fully fit in the League Cup home game, hence why he was kind of turned inside out a number of times by Jota, I think it was, during the game. But in this scenario, I think Arteta will stick with the back four. White is fantastic with the way he brings the ball out from the back. He's probably England's number one centre back for the future. You look at what he's going to be able to do in a Gareth Southgate side that love to play out from the back as well. If you think that Harry Maguire's getting to the team every single week, Ben White has far outshone Harry Maguire this season. And people talked about who was the silliest size, the famous memes that went about Canate and White and Varane, and when Koundé was also obviously linked with Chelsea as well. And White was kind of looked at as the bit of the court jester amongst those, but actually has shown to be one of the best signings across the league this season. So he's excellent. And then you've got to get past Ramsdale, who's, just been brilliant and probably the surprise signing of the season, one of the surprise signings across the whole of the continent, arguably, this year, because it comes from a side where he's been relegated with, where he was relegated with the team before that and relegated with the team he was on loan at as well. So to come then to Arsenal and perform the way he has done, I think have the third most clean sheets in the league this season is, it's staggering. So if there is a defence that can hold this Liverpool front line out, I would be, you'd be hard pressed to find a team better than Arsenal to try and do it.
Yeah, I'll fully admit I was one of those when Ramsdale signed that was giving some Arsenal fans.
So was I.
Yeah. He's really made me eat my words. He's been brilliant for you, isn't he? The energy he provides as well in the defence, his passion for it. But I'm going to move on to the context of the league now, because obviously it's a must-game win for Liverpool. But Arsenal themselves in a really good shot at the top four, aren't they? So is it a similarly crucial match for yourselves?
The Leicester win took a bit of pressure off this game for Arsenal. I think that Arteta will obviously be looking at it as not anything like a free hit or a bonus. But, I think there is an acceptance that Liverpool and City are the sides that Arsenal are trying to get onto that level 2 again, with the signings that they're making, with the way that they're playing football, with the mentality that Arteta's putting into the team. But this game will be looked at as, if we can get something from it, Arsenal have then got top 4 pretty much in their hands to then throw away. If we don't get anything from this game, it will be a case of regroup, go to Villa, move on from this. And, I don't think it will burden the side, because it wouldn't be like a shock defeat. And I think no one's going to be looking at it in that way. For Liverpool, the pressure's obviously increased because of last night's result against Crystal Palace. We're recording this on Tuesday, of course. And with that result, I'm not sure, and I'd love to get kind of your view from that perspective, is, do you think that result against Palace will have invigorated Liverpool? Because I feel like they were already fully motivated anyway, and whatever the result would have been, they would have carried on to push. But do you think it will have any bearing on the way that you approach the game?
I think the momentum sort of swung, because we've been in the position where we've played our games before City, albeit they've still had that game in hand. But the past few weeks, it's felt like we've played first. Whereas now City have dropped points, and that's going to switch. It's now going to be, all right, the pressure's on Liverpool now to go and beat Arsenal. And that's the game in hand that will level it out. But personally, I don't think it's going to impact it that much, because it's so cliche. But I think we are one of the best side of all time to be the one game at a time. And I think Klopp, really does actually manage that very well as a coach of Liverpool. So I don't think it'll impact them too much. But I'm going to bring it back around to Arsenal now, of course. We were expecting to be in this position with the greatest respect. Maybe some fans might have expected, your Man United, your Leicester, even Tottenham to be pushing for that 4th place. But Arsenal now really have got a shot at it. And would it be unsuccessful this season if they failed to do so?
I wouldn't describe it as a failure if we didn't get to top 4. I would say it would be a big disappointment considering the context of how the season's been. But I mean, at the start of the year, I was saying back into Europe, get that top 6, make that one step forwards. Because I looked at who was around. Man United are being touted as title challengers this season with the signings that they made. Spurs brought in Antonio Conte partway through the year and were looking better. And I think that what's gone on throughout the course of the season with both of the two teams that are chasing us in Spurs and Man United. And I don't bring up West Ham because I just think they've probably dropped away too much by this point, and Wolves definitely have dropped away by this point. We ourselves probably ended any hope they had of being in the top 4 race. So with United and Liverpool, and the way in which they've played and the way in which they've dropped points and the issues behind the scenes with United and Solskjaer, and then the Greenwood situation, of course, too, and then with Spurs and changing managers, and then dropping points in really important fixtures, winning against City and then dropping points against Burnley.
Just being very Spursy.
Very Spursy, which we all love and enjoy every single week. But I still don't look at it as a failure because of the context at the start of the season. That top four is an overachievement for this Arsenal squad. It's the youngest side in the Premier League with the most inexperienced coach in the Premier League. To get into that top four would be a great achievement and really would kind of justify and vindicate a lot of the decisions that have been made to keep hold of Arteta through times where, a lot of people, including myself, really question his position, especially after we finished 8th back-to-back and being knocked out the Europa League by Unai Emery, of all people, and Villarreal. So I think the way in which it's turned around and the way in which we've moved forward this season, if we say finish 5th and just missed out on the top four, I could probably compartmentalize that and understand the steps that we're taking to move forwards and realize that next season we're in an even better position to push forward to get to where we want to be. But make no bones about it, it would be a disappointment because we have a really good opportunity to get top four this season, and that would represent a giant leap forwards for Arsenal Football Club. Yeah,
exactly. So, and as you mentioned there, it's such a young, promising, exciting side with a young, promising, exciting manager. So in 12 months' time, what would progress look like to Arsenal? Would you like to be in a comfortable top four position this time next year? Or what would progress look like for the side?
Yeah, I mean, if we applied the caveat that Arsenal say qualify for the Champions League this season, in 12 months' time, we should be looking at being a side that are probably about where Chelsea are right now. Not in terms of, they were expected to be title challengers, but in the sense of how far they kind of are off of the sides like Liverpool and Man City. Still need to do more investment, still need to make better decisions, still need to be more consistent, but they've got Arsenal, hopefully will have a side by then, both with a much better striker, with a much better central midfielder, with greater depth throughout the side, with players like Odegaard, Saka, Smith Rowe, Martinelli, White, Gabriel, Tierney, all improving. Tomiyasu as well, Ramsdale too. More youth coming through. I mean, one thing that I think a lot of rival fans look at with Arsenal is, wow, look at this young, amazing side. But I think sometimes that overshadows the talent that's still coming through the Arsenal youth ranks that don't get as much game time because we've got such a young squad anyway. But you've got players like Charlie Patino, that's probably the most famous of all of them, that's coming through. There's a young guy at right back called Brooke Norton-Cuffy that's on loan with Lincoln that's doing exceptionally well as well. You've got Omar Rekic, who's a Tunisian international, who's already played at the African Cup of Nations, who's a centre-back that's coming through. There are some following Balogun, of course, a lot of people know about, who's at Middlesbrough right now as well. There are so much excited to be about Arsenal. It's a really exciting time to be an Arsenal fan and to get Champions League and then to see where we are in 12 months' time, hopefully after another big window, could see Arsenal in a position where the 23-24 season, you're looking at a side that maybe could be thinking about title challenging in a relatively short-term period.
Yeah, it definitely is seeable, isn't it? Especially with Chelsea. Who knows what's going to happen to them?
Of course, yeah.
They may plummet as well. But I'm going to bring it back around again to Wednesday night's match. Are there any notable injuries or suspensions within the Arsenal squad?
So the obvious one is Tomiyasu, as we've mentioned. He's suffered with back-to-back calf injuries. He injured, I think it was his right calf in, ironically, the game against Liverpool. Fought back and then was on the bench. I'm struggling to remember which game. I think it was for the Brentford game he was on the bench for, and then injured his left calf, which often happens when you injure one calf because you're putting all your weight on the other one when you're doing your rehab. But he's probably a doubt. He did train today, but it was light training, so he'll probably be back for Villa at the weekend, not tonight. But other than that,
it's your first game back against Luis Diaz. Enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's going to be a clean bill of health otherwise. The battles in terms of that, Luis Diaz up against Cedric is going to be scary, very, very scary indeed. But other than that, the difference between this and the side that obviously lost in the League Cup game is that Partey and Xhaka are both back now, have played significantly and really importantly together. And yeah, having that back and available has been huge. So yeah, just one injury for us, which is not a nice change for Arsenal this season because we've had so many injuries in the past that, it's often the big talking point of our season, but not this year.
You've dropped a few hints there. What do you think the starting 11 will look like?
Yeah, so I think it will probably be the same team that played at the weekend. So that'll be Ramsdale, Cedric. Tomiyasu stuck in my brain now. Ramsdale, Cedric, White, followed by Gabriel and Tierney with Xhaka playing in front of Partey in this kind of advanced role. A lot of people discuss whether he should drop back and be more reserved, but I still think he'll play in kind of this slightly ahead position and help with the progression. Odegaard on the right-hand side of the midfield three. and Saka up top with Lacazette and Martinelli. Smith Rowe probably coming off the bench later on during the game.
I mean, we've had so many classics between the two sides over the years at the Emirates, haven't we? I think we're pretty much set for another one. So just before we finish, I'm going to have to ask you for the dreaded score prediction. How do you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, is it right that I think between us we caused the highest score in Premier League games?
I believe so, yeah.
I think so. Usually not in Arsenal's favour, especially of late. So unfortunately, I hope it doesn't go out like that. Honestly speaking, from the head, I think it'll be a 3-1 Liverpool win. I just think Liverpool have got too much for Arsenal to deal with. And across the 90 minutes, I think you will come out on top. But it depends if Arsenal can get an early goal. If Arsenal can get an early goal, anything's possible with the way that they can defend. But if we concede, often what happens is the heads can go. So I'm going to stick with my head being a 3-1 win to Liverpool. But my heart will always go with a 2-1 winner. And fingers crossed. I'm going to be there. So fingers crossed, we can get the result.
Yeah, I'm going to be boring and agree with you. I think it's going to be a 3-1 scoreline, but hopefully one of the aforementioned classics. But Tom Canton, thank you so much for joining me. We will, of course, wait and see what happens, and we've got plenty of pre-match content to delve into, as well as all the post-match reactions. So be sure to catch us in the usual places of the Liverpool Echo, Liverpool.com and Blood Red. But for now, though, thank you for watching and listening. We'll be back post-match with all the best analysis and reaction, including from Jurgen Klopp. So until then, it's goodbye for now.